Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Beer Guys. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. 'Cause we learned it from you, Dad. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is the Blade edition. Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me for this Vampire Fest is Tom Stewart, the man himself. Say hello, Tom.
Listen, shit kicker, you're about one cunt hair away from hillbilly heaven.
There's no shortage of lines from these movies.
And that was in the halcyon days before being a proud American Southerner and a Nazi were two different states of being.
Right.
You can no longer play those two off each other anymore.
Oh, shit. The Blade series.
Right.
I am fascinated.
Yes, I fascinating was exactly the adjective I was going to use.
Yeah.
I think this is a fascinating couple. I know I say this every time, but this is a fascinating couple of films.
This really is something, though. It's
well,
I mean, I'll say, I'm going to save some of this, obviously, but for a couple of sequels that come out when they come out, 2002 and 2004,
right.
And of course, we had to wait a few years after the first one, which came out in 98.
That's right, yeah.
But when you juxtapose this series along with other series of the time, I mean, we're talking about The Matrix, we're talking about the Bourne series, the Kill Bills.
Yep.
These
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I mean, these movies present themselves as the next step in action evolution.
Yes.
And did not reach that point like these other movies did. These movies feel like early 90s movies.
That's fascinating. What really struck me was that for two sequels in the same series that were made relatively close to one another.
Yeah.
Within 2 years of each other. Their identities are totally different.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the movies, the identity of one of the movies is you read it through the cinematic auteur who is behind the movie.
Right.
And the other movie is split between so many different identities. The beginnings of a Marvel Cinematic Universe project,
sure.
The Dracula cycle. You have a writer-director who's sort of road testing the Dark Knight trilogy with this movie.
Well, and that's the other thing that's really interesting to me is, the writer wrote all three of these movies, but directed only the last one, right. David S. Goyer, but he's got his fingerprints on so many series we've done.
It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
Terminator and Batman.
Right.
And I'm sure there's more that we're not even thinking of. But he's an omnipresent figure.
Right. Well, and also Man of Steel
21st century franchise.
Yeah.
Cinema, specifically comic book adaptations.
Yeah, because he's also Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman. And Batman versus Superman, of course, we've done for a watch along. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. But it's fascinating.
His grubby little prints are all over the place.
Right. But what? It's difficult to pin down. Like Guillermo del Toro has a very overt style.
Right.
You can spot one of his films anywhere. David S. Goyer, I'm not sure quite. I guess because he works under the shadow of people like Del Toro, like a kind of Christopher Nolan figure, or. A Zack Snyder, who have their very, have firm ideas about what they want to do. So I'm like, what is the David S. Goyer touch?
Well, but that's
like trying to I can't quantify.
No,
it.
And the reason you can't is because that's his first film, and he hasn't directed a lot after that.
Oh, I think you're forgetting about Zigzag.
My mistake.
A movie I learned about days ago. No, but it is. There is actually. I'll save it for the episode. But there is a moment before I found out this was basically his first film, his first big film,
Right.
Blade Trinity, and I pegged it right away.
Yeah.
That he was a first time or early career director, and I'll tell when we get to the episode. I'll tell
I'm
you
excited.
exactly what that moment was. But it was before I even looked that up.
Yeah.
I just knew. So it's.
Well, that's the thing about that movie is it feels plainly obvious to me, but.
Well, at the very, I'm not saying anything about quality at this stage, but there's certainly a lot of variety here.
Mm-hmm.
These are two very different movies,
Yeah.
and I would argue there's a good 5 or 6 different movies in one of these movies.
And that's the other thing is, one of these movies feels like, there was a lot of Dracula play around this time too. I mean, through the aughts.
Is that like blood play or?
Well, through the aughts and like the in the like early 2010s, there's a lot of Dracula Untold and Dracula 3000, and there's just
it's the age of the vampire more generally as well.
Yeah,
it's when we get True Blood and Twilight. So it's interesting thinking about where this. I mean, to me, these movies fit into so many different trends of the period in which they were made. Sometimes it's almost difficult to kind of exactly pin them down. For two individual movies, they seem like they're playing into so many different cultural moments and ideas that are going on in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
Not to mention, the dance music of the time. I mean, we just don't put dance music like this on action movies anymore. And I think it's a very small historical window where rapid beat techno is automatically what you put under any fight sequence.
Well, and not just that, but because it also reminded, you have rave scenes.
Yeah.
That remind me of Matrix rave nonsense,
It's like we've de-electronified action cinema, and now it's it's very orchestral again. It's like we've gone back to like a classical, you don't hear like a outside of
But when you have
outside of actual referencing electronic score,
right.
Like Halloween Kills, for instance,
right?
The trend is definitely more towards orchestral, and I didn't think I realized that until I saw these movies that are entirely house
music,
dance tracks.
But it's just funny to me when you juxtapose these movies and take, The Matrix 2, but juxtapose them against, a Kill Bill or the Bourne series. And to me, it's like, watch them and see which ones bear out as the better films and the ones that stand the test of time a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It ain't these.
Interesting. I'm interested to hear your thoughts.
Yeah.
I think so. I think for at least one of the movies, and I won't say which one at this stage, I think for at least one of these movies, some of that sense of being of datedness is sort of a little more conscious.
Yeah, okay. I hope we're thinking of the same movie, but
I think one of these movies is looking backwards in a very deliberate way.
Okay.
To an earlier periods of cinema. And I think another one just has no fucking clue what it wants to do.
All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, obviously we're talking about the Blade series. Starring Wesley Snipes, and we are here to both rank and declare on these episodes. We have a different director for each of these movies, including the original, Tom.
Oh, really? I did not know that about the original. Who directed the original?
Stephen Norrington of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen fame. As in, I have not made a movie since the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
But that's quite a well-regarded movie, isn't it, Blade?
It's
Wait, so Guillermo del Toro took over for the sequel?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a very left field choice both for him and the movie.
It doesn't
that
feel
stage.
like a left field choice for him. I get what you're saying in terms of like
At that
taking
point,
over
no.
the series.
Yeah.
But Blade does feel in his wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And of course he makes his presence felt in the film that he directs.
Yeah, and
I mean, you see a lot of Hellboy in Blade 2.
well, you actually see Hellboy in
That's true.
in Blade 2. Well, but also, I mean, we've been talking a lot recently about doing franchises that are still with us. That have yet to be shat out of the public consciousness. And here's another one, because as far as I know, the Blade is being rebooted.
It is, yeah.
But also in recent history, did you ever see The Strain?
I haven't watched The Strain, and I know that it's a Guillermo del Toro thing, but I haven't watched it.
I have seen The Strain, and now that I've seen Blade 2, basically it's a runway for the storyline of The Strain.
So I remember reading that.
Yeah. So these might, we can talk about how dated these movies seem, and as much as we like, but people, the industry and culture at large has not given up on them. Also, the rising star of Guillermo del Toro,
right,
in the years since
of
since
course.
Blade 2 came out, testifies to the fact that much of what's in these movies is very much still with us.
Sure.
To this very day.
Yeah. And as you said, they're being rebooted with Mahershala Ali.
Right. Which is in itself a kind of surrogacy, I think. If you see a picture of him in shades,
right,
that it wouldn't pass the demented grandma test of is that Wesley Snipes or not?
Right. I know you've been rolling your...
Which was previously applied to Val Kilmer as taking over from Michael Keaton's Batman. Your demented grandma wouldn't know it wasn't Michael Keaton.
I know you've been one to roll your eyes lately at stories of method acting.
Right.
But one of my favorite quotes was Ryan Reynolds was asked what it was like to work with Wesley Snipes on a Blade movie, and he said, "I never met Wesley Snipes. I only met Blade."
Huh. Well, it was interesting to see how that kind of speaks to the extra involvement that he has in these movies, because of course he's responsible for a lot of the fight coordination, at least on Blade 2. So clearly his dedication and devotion to the role is all there on screen.
Right, and you actually have the opposite.
It is not wasted energy,
No, right. Because you have the opposite. It seems like Ryan Reynolds is kind of making light of it, but Guillermo del Toro had basically the same answer, but the opposite reaction.
Yeah.
In which he said, there was nothing that you could ask Wesley Snipes about Blade that he wouldn't know. Like, that's how connected to the character he was, and he really appreciated that when he was directing him.
Well, that's the thing. It makes other actors look bad, but it makes the director look better. So it's no wonder they have those respective positions. Is it really? Because it seems like he is partially responsible for directing the movie. In that, if you put it that way. Yeah.
All right.
Fascinating.
So where does that leave us? I mean, normally we talk about if this was easy or hard. In ranking.
Here's the thing. Yeah. I'd never seen these movies.
That was one of my questions.
Nor have I seen Blade. Clearly, given that away. I thought it was a Guillermo del Toro film.
Right.
But I'm aware of them by reputation. I'm aware of what
You mentioned
generally people
reputation
think
earlier
about them.
because it's not that the first Blade, it's not that it's not well regarded,
Yeah.
but I think Blade 2, even by Snipes himself, is regarded as the best of the three.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'm aware of them by reputation. So I feel like for most people, this would be a complete no-brainer in terms of ranking and declaration. Right. And for me, you know, I have to overcome some personal prejudices in order to sort of make an objective-ish evaluation of these two films.
I was going to ask, because didn't you have something salty to say about Guillermo del Toro not too long ago?
Yeah. And I want to set the record straight, okay? This is the elephant in the closet. My feelings about Guillermo del Toro. So, when I see this gentleman's films, I am typically underwhelmed. I find them... I don't actively dislike them. I find them perfectly watchable.
Uh-huh.
But I have a real disconnect between the critical audience reaction to his movies and
what you think.
I cannot connect those two ideas of the same director. However, just to sort of has
there been a Guillermo del Toro movie that you've loved?
No.
Okay.
No, he's nowhere near. But that was exactly what I was going to say. I have an easier time with the more superficial end of his work.
I see. Okay.
I don't think he knows his way around an art film as well as people seem to think he does, with Pan's Labyrinth, Shape of Water, etc. So when he does this more...
But the Hellboys of the world?
Well, that's it. When he does the pulpier material, I'm more inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt.
So what is it? What's that disconnect? What is?
Well, we can talk about it on a case by case basis.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, my operational theory, which to some extent was borne out by seeing Blade 2, although that doesn't mean I've declared. Don't ever think that means I've declared yet. So this is the analogy I go with every time, and this analogy is going to irritate you as well. I'm creating a whole nother. I'm trying to bitch less about Del Toro, but bitching more about someone else. So I see
who's in your crosshairs now.
Exactly. That's what it feels like. To me, he's like the Bono of cinema.
Jesus Christ.
So you know, whenever I hear Bono talk about music, I agree with everything he says, and I think you understand this.
But you hate U2.
But yeah, I listen to U2, and it's like none of that goes into their music. Like they miss none of. I can't hear any of that in the music. And I feel the same similarly about Del Toro. He loves all the right movies, and he loves them for all the right reasons.
Right.
And I do see, and I guess it's better than Bono. Headline news. Better than Del Toro. Better than Bono. Because I do see that I do see that in his movies. I see that he understands what's good about cinema and what's good about certain movies. But I don't know that he has a new or interesting spin
on that. Gotcha.
And the movies I like least of his movies are movies that refuse to own up to the fact that they're remakes.
Such as?
Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water.
Okay.
Which are remakes of Creature from the Black Lagoon and Spirit of the Beehive.
Okay. I don't know Spirit of the Beehive.
It's Pan's Labyrinth, but
okay,
not a fantasy movie.
Is it a foreign film?
Yes.
Okay.
Spanish, I think.
All right. Interesting. Have you seen the new one? Have you seen Nightmare Alley?
No. That is because that is a remake. Why
it
would
is a remake, yes.
Why would I punish myself?
It's a deliberate.
This is my entire problem with him, is that he just remakes other movies. Why would I go and see a movie that is already a remake? So that's that's a big part of it. But to balance it out, I like the more superficial end. So Blade has a better chance than other of his movies for me liking it. I also have decidedly mixed feelings about David S. Goya as a film artist. And I have to tell you, in watching these two movies back to back, I began to see the value of Guillermo del Toro as a directorial hand.
I got really worried there for a second.
But none of that came from watching Blade 2. It all came from watching Blade Trinity.
Okay.
Because I began to think, oh, you know what? When you do a fight sequence, you probably need to do more than let combat trained actors just do whatever the fuck they want.
Right, exactly.
Apparently that's harder than I gave it credit for. So yeah, that's all at play here, but I've been able to put, because having that wider perspective has definitely probably undone some of the kind of prejudice I have towards
Del Toro,
the director specifically. Yeah. I can see it definitely see it in a broader light, having seen the two films together. And also, having seen subsequent Marvel movies with similar projects, you begin to get an overall sense of what's good or bad in this field.
Sure.
Because this is Blade Trinity.
Yeah, this is.
Well, they're both early Marvel movies. Blade Trinity has the Marvel logo at the beginning.
Yeah, right.
Which is a significant kind of switch over.
Marvel had finally.
Yeah, only a year after Hulk as well.
Yeah, right.
Which I find fascinating for reasons that I'll divulge when I've done my ranking and declaration. Because to say more would be tipping my hand even more than I already have.
What I think is interesting about everything that you said is I could see somebody else having the complete opposite reaction. Somebody who's bought into Del Toro and watches this early film of his,
right,
and thinks, I see a guy at the beginning of his career. There are directorial flashes, and you can see kind of the part of his auteurism at play.
Yeah.
But you see somebody who doesn't have full command of his...
Yeah, definitely.
Of his particular milieu or whatever.
Yeah, he's kind of slumming it.
Right.
It might be for some people that it's the beginnings of something that would be truly great, but I think what he's become is less significant than what he was then.
Yeah.
Because precisely of his ability to handle certain kinds of material and his inability to handle certain other kinds of material.
And then the other thing for me that's interesting with these movies is you have, again, that we're kind of doing a series in which I don't have a lot of background knowledge. I haven't read the Blade comics.
Big surprise there for both of us.
But
if there's a comic, we've not read it.
But what's interesting to me is you have
do you read a comic?
What's that?
Do you read a comic or do you look at it, or is that an offensive stereotype?
I think that's an offensive stereotype, sir.
Okay, I'll go with reading then.
Yes. But Blade in itself is kind of interesting because you have two worlds colliding together. You have, people that just love vampire shit and people that just love comic shit, and now they're both together in one character.
Martial art. Well, more than that, I'd say martial arts.
Yeah, maybe,
well. Yeah. It's
But it's like if you see these posts wherever on Facebook, like these, kind of IMDb posts about the best vampire movies, there's always going to be people that are like saying something akin to Blade is the best series that's ever been. 30 Days of Night is the best vampire movie ever. These movies that don't stand out to me as the cream of the crop in cinema, but that...
Well, they're movies that are uncomfortable with being associated with vampire movies as well.
You think?
Like even the films, well, Blade Trinity certainly. You could also sort of make that argument about, they try and dress it up as something other than a vampire movie. And
do you think it's a default?
Occasionally,
you think that's a default of this series? Like,
in one of the movies, yeah.
Okay.
I'm grateful for it in one, and I find the other distasteful. But I just forgot. I totally buried the lead. The best chance this series has of me liking it is about the man we've already talked about, is one of my favorite film actors of this era, Wesley Snipes. And we've been robbed of so many great performances by him because of tax crime. Admittedly, his tax crime.
Yeah.
But even last year, seeing him, something of a comeback in Coming Digit to America.
Mm-hmm. Coming Digit to America.
Letting loose comedically, and it just reminded me of what an asset he was for like 90s and early 2000s Hollywood.
Sure.
So that's gonna make a huge difference, because he helms both movies. I mean, this series is all about him.
Now, so what is it about Wesley Snipes for you that you sort of revere so much? Because you give a lot of shit to a lot of actors. So is it just the 90s part of it, or
I like some actors?
What is it about?
No, I don't think it's nostalgia. I think he's just got a really interesting approach to acting. Like, he's able to do dispassionate and cool very well.
Mm-hmm.
But he also is very, he humanizes his roles as well. And this is where, this is the role for him that I can't imagine anyone else doing.
Right.
I really don't think, with the greatest respect to the gentleman who's taking over, I really don't think, I wouldn't, if I was in Hollywood, I wouldn't dream of having anyone but Wesley Snipes in this role.
That's interesting.
Because, I think, he's got such a great, if you think about the range of parts he's played, like supporting, leading, like, he's been able to carry a movie, but also, also be kind of flamboyant, like a flamboyant background character as well.
Sure.
And then completely pare it down to like the basics of a good leading man. I just don't think many actors in Hollywood have got that dynamic, got that kind of dynamic.
Sure.
And that's why this role is, he was born to play.
I do think the one thing I've always really loved about Wesley Snipes is I think he draws people in, meaning you lean in when he's speaking. I mean, I remember one of the first times I saw him was Major League, and he looks like a real ball player.
Yeah, yeah.
And
well, he looks like a real vampire in this.
Exactly.
He's the most convincing vampire out of all of these fucking guys. And he's the one who's only half a vampire.
Right.
You believe that he drinks blood. You also believe you also believe that he's fighting against wanting to drink
I was just going to say, there's never a moment in these movies where you don't believe that he has some self-loathing for himself.
Yeah.
And who he is and what he has to do.
And it's particularly remarkable given that at least one of these films is making him fight against his portrayal of the character.
Yeah. And
he sort of stands above it in a way that, we've talked before about how certain actors, you just feel the weight of the film on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that they just don't
collapse.
know what to do. Yeah, they don't know what to do with it, and they start making bad choices. But I don't know if it's part of this, this part of this method he has of, like, he's actually meditating, on set as the character. But he's just oblivious to all the nonsense around him that is trying to bring him down.
Right.
In at least one of these movies.
Well, I mean, I feel like we've tried to play our cards as close to our chests as possible.
It's hard.
It's not easy.
And it's also, I don't think it's a big surprise to a lot of people.
I don't think it should be.
No.
So I assume we're both on the same page. What is your top-rated movie of the Blade sequels?
Yeah, even I would have a hard time of making work of this. It's Blade 2.
Yeah, it has to be.
Or Blade 2 lines. If you put Blade 2, the digit 2, into IMDb, it won't come up first. So, no, I think Blade 2 lines.
You gotta go Blade positive, or capital I, capital I.
Capital I, capital I. But I might just start referring to those as Blade, as like 2 lines instead of 2. Yeah, and I mean, you know, when it's a straight comparison between two movies, it's very easy.
It really is.
I think these are largely action films, and if you were to pit the action sequences of of this and Blade Trinity, there's just no contest.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many impressive action sequences in Blade 2.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like that now. At the time, you know, only a few years after Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon came out.
Yes, right. That was on my mind too.
When mainstream Hollywood is still learning how to do martial arts in its movies, it seems like it peaked at that point. It doesn't seem like it got better after that. I think this is one of Wesley Snipes' best performances. And there are a few other performances and actors in the movie that I really like. It hangs together well.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you compare this and Blade Trinity as sequels, which I like to do in the ranking as well, the sequel conceit. So both of these movies have sequel conceits that are fairly artificial. It's like, we want to change up the formula by throwing in this big kind of shit bomb that'll fuck everything up. Right, they're both like the ship, you know, so we throw in the shit bomb, it changes everything, the stakes are different, everything
Be
goes
specific,
upside down.
which shit bombs are we talking about?
Well, no, but I mean the shit bomb in Blade 2 is a lot better than the shit bomb in Blade Trinity.
Yeah, but what are they?
Like, it's
now, are you
double vampires,
right?
Also known as the Reaper strain, but I call them double vampires.
So,
and Dracula.
Okay. See, I didn't know if you were also counting, the Scooby Gang in the third movie versus, sort of raising those.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. Yeah, it's like changing up the Scooby Gang every time.
Yeah.
Is part of it too. Yeah, but they're both doing essentially the same things as a sequel, or what is doing it far more successful.
So much better. I think
and who knew it would be the one that involved Luke Goss from Bros? Who could have seen that coming?
Yeah, I think my note upon hearing
you've not seen The Strain, but The Strain is basically, the name of the strain could be double vampires.
Really?
That's what it's about.
Okay.
Yeah, that's everything about the double vampires in that is
chin vampires.
Yeah, chin vampires. Yeah. I kept saying I was trying to come up with a name for, because they don't tell you what these vampires who hate vampires are for a while.
Yeah, right.
So I came up with the name Double Vampires, and I think I was thinking of Richard Pryor talking about prison. In prison you have the Muslims and the double Muslims, and it's the double Muslims you've got to watch. So double vampires.
Double vampires.
Double vampires.
I wasn't pulling from Richard Pryor. I just wrote down chin vampires.
Chin vampires is very good.
Yeah.
I like.
But of course,
the Reaper strain.
I, like you, have Blade 2 at the top of my list. Yeah. I just, to me, it's as plain as the nose on our faces, or the nose is on our faces. It can't be argued.
Yeah.
Top to bottom.
It also reminds, let's assume for a second, hypothetically, before we blow that hypothetical, that the quality between these two movies is on a par. The fact that Blade 2 has a vision of what it wants to be and Blade Trinity does not, makes a huge difference.
Yeah, sure.
Even if I really didn't like that vision, and at times I don't.
Yeah, that's interesting, because me too.
I feel like the level of confusion about what kind of a movie Blade 3 wants to be is going to mean it's always going to be at the bottom of the pile.
Yeah.
Even if, like, not thinking good or bad at all, just, like, get your shit together.
Right.
Time. You know. Blade 2 really has its shit together.
It has its shit together. It knows exactly what it wants to be.
It's a handful of it's one of those, again, you talked about 90s cinema, and where I really get the nostalgia feels is it's like those movies that are just a handful of set pieces, like Speed.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, we're not aiming too high.
Those are some of my notes.
What we've got.
Those are some of my notes of, man, these movies are just set piece extravaganzas.
Yeah, it's just like let's just get through these few set pieces, and then
we'll be at the end.
Right. and cinema does, movies don't work like that anymore.
No, right.
It's like, you're referring out to 7 other different narrative strands.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it's Blade is just like, it's just going down one line.
Right.
It's like a tunnel. It has tunnel vision. And that means so much when you put it against a movie that, I am as confused as what happens as I am at the beginning at the end as I was at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I think you're as confused as its director was too. So obviously,
and after the success of Zigzag, I mean, come on, sophomore slump. I didn't even look at what Zigzag really was.
I know. Well, obviously, I looked at the list and just disregarded it completely because I said that this was his first movie.
It's like an inconvenient truth, isn't it? It's like you want.
Wait, did I see that Wesley Snipes is in Zigzag too?
He might be. When we did Rocky 3, and there was like a really shitty movie that would have meant we couldn't say this was Mr. T's screen debut. So you just ignore that it happened.
Yeah.
And say that, because I think even then the movie says introducing Mr. T.
Yeah, he is in it.
Oh, wow, okay. So it's not a small movie.
And so's Natasha Lyonne, so.
Oh, okay.
And so's Luke Goss.
No way, really?
I swear.
No.
Yeah.
So this is the blue in the face to Blade 2's Smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
They'd made it on the set, improvised it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Wow.
Well, obviously, by the nature of doing a trilogy, once we announce that Blade 2 is our top of our lists, that means Blade Trinity, no shock to anybody, is at the bottom of our lists.
Right. Yeah. That's really all I knew about it beforehand as well, is that it was probably going to be at the bottom of my list unless I was so inclined to take pity on it.
How quickly into Blade Trinity did you put it at the bottom of your list?
Mike, it's so amazing you asked me that question. Because it may be a record.
Was it the voiceover?
Yes. And only about 10 seconds of the voiceover.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because I thought, I don't dislike this as much as I dislike Terminator Salvation, but I knew this was going to be at the bottom of the list before I knew Terminator Salvation.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, when you alienate about 50% of your fan base in the opening voiceover, something's not gone right.
Yeah, exactly. I have so many notes.
I mean, you give Rian Johnson shit for throwing the lightsaber over the shoulder. I think sort of opening a movie by saying Hammer horror Dracula movies are shit.
Yeah.
Is like, okay. I think a lot of people who came to see this movie probably like
them.
Being as they are vampire movies and the best of the vampire movies.
I have so many notes that say, did he just let Ryan Reynolds do whatever he wanted?
What? I mean, talk about a makeover.
Yeah.
He's gone to comic timing school in between
Right.
Blade Trinity
Exactly,
and Deadpool,
yes.
right?
He's still in that pizza store with the two girls or whatever at the time of this movie.
It's kind of I can't think of anyone who started out that unfunny who came to be someone known for their comedy.
But also, who found us, because it's not like he's doing different shit now.
No, that's my first note there. It's like, well, right. I guess Ryan Reynolds
figured out how to make it work
from the beginning. He cornered that market as soon as he started acting in movies. But he's not funny in any shape or form, and has no comic timing.
It is so fascinating as a watch when you're watching that movie.
Yeah.
It's like,
really
I kept saying, he's doing all the same shit he always does, that I always like in movies he does now, that I am hating actively in this movie.
I had exactly the same note. He went to comic timing school.
It's incredible.
It was must have been like a weekend intensive before they started filming Deadpool or something.
Right. Well, maybe that's part of it too. I mean, he found the right character.
Well, in the same way that I want Wesley Snipes to take Jennifer Aniston on a weekend intensive to get her to stop moving her face when she acts. I just watched all of the morning show, and I spend the whole time going, "Stop moving your face! You don't need to move your face when you act." In the part of the series where she got COVID, spoiler alert, but catch up. I was just like, "What's the difference? She always acts like she has COVID. She never stops fucking moving her face. Like something's wrong with her." Gabriel Byrne and Wesley Snipes would knock that shit out of her in a weekend. You do not need to move your face to
Stop
act.
moving that face. You ever seen that Cheers episode where Diane gets warned about her facial tic?
Yes. Yeah.
That's some good
fantastic. Shit. Buster Keaton never moved his fucking face, and he's one of the greatest actors of all time.
And Buster Keaton was Buster fucking Keaton.
Anyway.
All right. Well, that leaves us with bad, Tom.
Right. Okay.
I'm fascinated.
Okay. Do you want to start with Blade 2?
Let's start with Blade 2.
Okay.
What say you?
I want to hear from you first, because I think you're and I'm going to use the wrong conjugation here, lukewarm on this movie than I expected you to be.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
It's like it's like I'm balancing on a razor's edge and I could fall down either way.
Okay.
A
blade's edge, you might say. Razor blade's edge.
Yeah, exactly. I could say that it's good, but I'd have a lot of buts.
Yeah.
Or I could say that it's bad, but I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
So for me, at the end of the day, I decided not to just wrestle too much with this, and I thought, yeah, this is a good movie.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's a good movie.
I'm right there with you. It doesn't.
I have plenty that I have problems with, but
yeah,
on the whole, this is the best movie in the series, and
it doesn't cure me of my reservations.
Which I know because I've seen all the
Del
movies
Toro.
in the series, but
my feelings about it were, it doesn't cure me of my reservations with Del Toro. It seems to me from the outside overrated for what it really is.
Yeah, that I agree with. But
it's good, and that good is a perfectly good adjective,
right,
to describe this movie. I mean, it's got great action sequences.
Yes.
It's got great performances. It hangs together well. Get me a bucket of popcorn with some Reese's Pieces mixed in, I'm going to have a good night.
Yeah. I feel the same.
But if you want me to go beyond that, then you're in trouble because
because it's not anything more than that.
No, it really isn't.
So for
it's
the people that are
it's a good
diehards,
night's entertainment.
yeah, for the people that were diehards that I was speaking of earlier, who are the kind of people who wouldn't hear a word against this movie, it's not that.
No.
I got plenty of words against the movie.
Yeah.
You know, the movie is not a perfect movie, and there, of course, are very few of those, but...
No, and this movie needs to learn the meaning of the word subtext.
Yeah, yes, you're right.
Which, again, is sort of like, well, I'd rather we fuck this up in the frame of Blade 2 than Pan's Labyrinth, you know?
Yeah,
it's
right.
If you can't handle metaphor,
yes,
mishandle it in a vampire movie with Wesley Snipes, you know?
That's great.
Okay.
All right.
So I think
we're
on the same
page.
But I think I might have less of a problem. I mean, maybe it's just a surprise of liking a Del Toro movie more than I normally do. But I quite enjoy it. I had a good time with it. But it's probably more to do with Wesley Snipes for me.
Yeah.
And Chris Christopherson and another actor who is excellent.
Another couple of actors.
Yeah, another cut. Yeah, but
I mean that's the thing. That movie has good performances.
I realized, like having when I saw Chris Christopherson was in the movie, it's like how many of my favorite films feature Chris Christopherson.
Yeah, right. No,
it's kind of.
I was
amazing.
just talking with friends about Chris Christopherson.
For someone who's not an actor.
Yeah, right. Exactly, and that's the thing is you go back and you look at his career. And you don't think of him as an actor, but it's chopped full of good performances, and he holds this movie down every bit as much as Wesley Snipes does. He is every bit as much as Whistler as Wesley Snipes is Blade.
Right.
They both completely and wholly own their characters.
Until they blow him up.
Yeah, well.
After making him hick Alfred for a scene. No, yeah, I was just like, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Lone Star. These are some of my favorite movies, and he's at the heart of both of them. So, and there's at least one more British actor in it who I really love, and his casting was a stroke of genius.
All right.
I'm not talking about Luke Goss.
Okay.
Whom I don't consider an actor, but I have nothing but good things to say about him in this movie.
All right. Well, that leaves us, and so we're on the same page. We both think this is a good movie.
It's a good movie with problems.
I dare say that maybe there's no surprise
with
Blade Trinity, given what we've said so far.
Well, I think the only surprise is it's not just bad; it's bad with a double D and no ass. It has a boner, but no ass.
Yep.
A very visible blade boner, or a blader, which I'm surprised he didn't commandeer as a weapon at some point. No, I mean, I'd heard that, I knew of this movie by reputation. I knew it was considered a disappointing end to the trilogy. I came in with an open mind because so much of that normally has to do with fan expectation.
Sure. But they weren't wrong.
But they weren't wrong. But but I came out of it thinking, wow, this takes the heat off Ang Lee for setting the Marvel Cinematic Universe back.
Yeah, right.
5 years. I mean, I could make an impassioned defense of certain aspects of Hulk. I don't think I could do that with this movie. It's just.
It feels
it's a confused.
Yeah, it feels feeble.
It's a confused movie that doesn't execute anything well. I mean, that's my
overall note.
log line. Yeah, and there's really nothing that doesn't apply to that. It's as confused as Nigel.
Except Wesley Snipes.
Nothing works stylistically, conceptually, tonally. Nothing is gelling at all.
Mm-mm.
I mean. It's interesting, like fan expectation was obviously let down.
Sure.
But I can't think of any expectation that you have that wouldn't be zero. You wouldn't like what you know, if you came into this thinking you were going to see a Dracula movie, you wouldn't be happy. If you came into this, it was a Marvel comic movie, you wouldn't be happy. You know, what is
a Blade movie? You wouldn't be happy.
What's it? You know, what is what's the point? That's such a Chew comment, isn't it? But it's a worthy one. I really did think, you know, I thought, what's the ultimate goal here of making this movie?
Well,
what are they trying to revive? Right? Are they trying to revive Blade? Are they trying to revive Dracula? Are they trying to what are they doing?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're doing any of that. It feels like they're ending all of them.
Right. Is this they're trying to create a Hannibal King series? What's going on?
Yeah. And that's the thing that I think bothers me the most, is it feels like that this movie wants to introduce the Scooby Gang as, hey, these are the people we'll be following from now on, almost, you know?
Yeah, because everyone else is dead.
Exactly. It's very offensive that only the Scooby Gang.
Yeah.
Poor Scooby.
And that's what, you know, that's what I mean. Like sometimes just thinking about what David S. Goyer thinks about, you know, writing a screenplay and characterization it just baffles me. It's like, we're gonna have one character who has no personality, and then another who has too much personality, and they'll balance each other out. I mean, it's got to be the thinking, right? It's like, why would you have Ryan Reynolds making a joke every 10 seconds and Jennifer Beals saying or doing nothing? Like someone, like a fucking lamp.
Yeah.
She is a lamp in this movie.
And Ryan Reynolds...
And she's supposed to be the daughter of the man who has the most personality of anyone in the franchise. It's like we need a Maury Povich paternity test.
Remember back in the first movie when Whistler seemed to intimate that his entire family is dead? Well, here's his daughter.
Well, having not seen it, I have a lot of questions about what's in that first movie.
I'm sure you do.
And you might not be surprised to learn.
As always.
As always, I was going in blind, and I made a lot of mistakes. I hit a lot of walls.
I can't wait until you ask me which characters were in the first movie.
Well, you probably, when we talk about Blade 2, you're probably going to know who's the top of my list about who I thought was in the first movie and isn't.
That's fantastic.
Oh,
that's great. All right. Anything left before we wrap it up?
No, I'm yeah.
We're both Blade 2 at the top and Trinity on the bottom, and we're both good bad.
Yeah.
Done and done.
Done and done. So no contention between us. But still a lot of interesting material to discuss.
Sure. All right then, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to tell us what you think. How do you rank these movies? Are they both good? Are they both bad? Do you split? And which way do you split? Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter to let us know. Or send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. We will read what you have to say on air. That's it. Next time you hear us, we'll be talking Blade 2. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, of course, Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. That's it until next time. Say goodbye, Tom.
And when the fuck did you see my dick, fuckface? Just think about that. Drink in that sentence.
Just think about that.
13-year-old. Like, is David S. Goyer a 13-year-old boy?
Right.
Or was he at that point?
Well, what's funny about that is lines like that coming from Triple H, he liked so much he kept adding more lines for him to say.
So he Gary Busey'd this.
Exactly.
Wow. I mean, you know, it's a room full of idiotic characters, so no one's saying anything particularly much better than that.
Agreed.
You have two fucks and a dick.
Now that I want
11 words.
that I
2 fucks and a
that
dick.
I want on a T-shirt. 2 fucks and a dick.
2 fucks and a dick. 11 words.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had 1, maybe 2 craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need. The Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.